Right. So here are the functional requirements followed by the kind of rules that are to be defined whenever we are working on the suspension plan. Because as part of guideware billing, suspension plan can be there, right? So different suspension plans. That life cycle generally we perform being a billing person. So if there is any suspension plan configuration we want to do, we need to understand about what are the different business rules that we have that are to be upgraded. At the same time, we must be knowing about what are the triggering criteria followed by the timelines for the suspension plan. So in this regard, so there were few functional requirements one should be understand. The functional requirements where which can be converted as a target state, trigger state. Okay, trigger state. For example, these were the requirement ID numbers I have mentioned. Like so we are nothing but business requirements document, provided we are provided we are working on the requirements document. For example, when you follow the traditional model, we prepare documents, etc., wherein we are using business requirements documents. So BR, it starts with BR, stands for business requirements, and SUSP means suspension plan. 0001 is the number. Okay, let's say that 5 requirements we have taken. These 5 requirements, the first requirement starts with invoice due date. For example, if there is any suspension plan, whatever customer has not paid, okay, so wherein the plan is suspended, there wherein we must be knowing about the invoice due date. For example, if there is any kind of invoice due date which is a triggering stage, okay, generally invoice due date, which is 0 date because target date is already crossed, right? So the number of days that we can see here is 0. Now, what should be the business rule or the kind of business threshold we need to know, right? So this is something that invoice unpaid or due date means invoice due date is crossed automatically where the invoice whatever is being created, okay, because based upon the billing life cycle, based on the type of billing customer pay, we create invoice and we'll send them, okay, because within the due date that invoice has to be honored by the customer and he has to pay the payment, wherein invoice considered as unpaid, okay. So invoice unpaid on the due date is the business threshold or the rule that is to be taken here. Now, what kind of action we need to execute in the billing center, right? So, because in this billing center, the action will be like account remains active because this is under the suspension where unpaid invoice. It is not the permanent cancellation. So, account in the back end of the system, which will remains active, and whenever system is entering the payment grace period. For example, any due date is crossed, grace period, which is nothing but a delinquency we call it as, right? So it is in the delinquency period where they have given 4 weeks of time, which is equivalent to 1 month. Within the time, customer has to pay. Till the time, the account will remains active, but the kind of benefits or the coverages, if he wants to use, cannot be, but account remains active. So wherein entering the payment grace period and all. So this is the action executed in the billing center. Now, what should be the outbound notification for system touchpoint that we are using it? So automatically sending payment reminder email to the primary insured person. So that primary insured person has to be paid this on time. This is what generally when we see the configuration and all integrations, etc. There are two things. One is inbound, second is outbound. Outbound notification, where we are sending the reminder to the customer. So through an email system or through whatever the messaging system that we are adopting. So we have to send an email to the customer stated that primary insured that your payment is due is pending. Okay, there where they have to pay the payment and all, right? So this is the first requirement. And this is all something as a BA one should understand all this, right? So second one about grace period expiration. Let's say that grace period is already expired. Okay. Normally grace period expiration where generally there will be a because there will be a slab will be there, right? Let's say, for example, due date is completed. That's called as dunning process in Guidewire Billing, where every 15 days or 1 month, right? So we'll be sending reminders and all to them. So grace period expiration is the target date, which is on the 15 days. So generally, this is past due balance, right? So past due balance is, for example, there is a threshold limit where they're mentioning it is the due balance if it is more than $50. If it is lesser than $50, then system won't detect, because these are the kind of instructions we are giving a system to understand. So past due date balance is greater than $50, automatically this business threshold rule will be initiated, so that we will initiate the delinquency process wherein we need to flag the account as a delinquent. Automatically, system has to do that. For that only, we are writing the requirement. Subsequently, this has to be configured by the development team later on. So it generates automatically notice and as well as impeding suspension document here. This is the second requirement. Third requirement, suspension effective date, right? So suspension effective date, consider that we are giving 30 days of time. For example, if there is no payment that we have received, as a business threshold limit, we see there is no payment that we have received, no active promise has paid by the customer, even we have set the reminders to that. So automatically, system has to execute the suspension plan here. That's what the requirement majorly lies on. So that it blocks the new disbursements and all, it blocks the credit extensions also. There is no further credit extensions will be given and no new disbursements will be entertained. So automatically it sends event notification to the policy tenders to suspend the policy endorsement, because policy document generations, everything happens in the policy center. So automatically it sends notification to the policy center so that it suspends the policy endorsements. Next one about the full payment received, right? So whenever we are paying, understanding the full payment received, anytime between 0 to 60 days, automatically account balances paid will be considered as in full. If it is lesser than $10 threshold and all, automatically suspension plan will be lifted, and whatever the account that is under the suspension account, which will be restored, and it's for a good standing, it will be, so that automatically publishing suspension lifted even to the policy center and portal, so that in the policy center the document or the policy document will be considered as active. It will remains active under the from the suspension, it will be moved. Next, cancellation trigger. Cancellation trigger, where the timeline we are providing for these days, whatever I'm mentioning, these days can vary, but generally any insurer, these target limit dates and all, everything more or less the same. Okay. So target plus 45 days, automatically suspension unresolved after 15 days. Automatically it will be escalated to cancellation plan for non-payment, because as customer has not paid. Subsequently, sending notice for cancellation to the policy center. Automatically, policy center on the date and time, policy will be cancelled. If customer we want to reinstate it, he has to do it on the same day itself. Otherwise, automatically policy will be cancelled. If you want to reinstate that, he have to rewrite the policy. Whatever the risk assessments, etc., has to be done accordingly. This is how for one requirement for suspension plan life cycle. From a BA perspective, we need to know about what are the requirements, right? So everything we must be knowing. So for that, what should be the architecture, data architecture, and Guidewire architects do that, solution architects and all. From a developer point of view, how do we do it? As a QA point of view, how are we going to do it? These will comes next, right? So these are all something which from the requirements point of view, from a BA side, this is how we need to know and understand.